So energy management is something that we need to be very interested about. And how do we aggregate the required energy, leverage the wins, the momentum, as you're saying, but also then oscillate that with rest.
This is Desmond Dixon, and I am here with my wonderful co-hosts, Heather Stafford, Josh Jacko, and today we have a guest who I'm so excited to jump into with you guys. His name is RJ Singh, and the man is on a mission to help people with creating ultra habits, which is he's actually a podcast host of Ultra Habits Podcast. Just to kind of give you an idea of who this guy is, he's a corporate and ultra endurance athlete, family man, and is dedicated to the pursuit of self-mastery. His mission is to lead by example and share the ultra habits needed to achieve ultra performance in all areas of life. Thanks for joining us, RJ. What's up, man?
Thanks for having me. Love the conversation offline already that we've had. Thanks for inviting me to be on your show.
Cool, man. So we're just going to dive right in. And I love to start off the pod with, like, who is RJ? Like, how did RJ become RJ of Ultra Habits? Like, give us a quick background of how you define Ultra Habits.
Well, yeah, look, I was the opposite of Ultra Habits for a long time. I was addicted to everything that I shouldn't have been. I was a institutionalized young person. I then became an institutionalized young adult, and I just was addicted to anything that would move me away from how I felt. And I was on my way to a life in prison or death, whichever one came first. And through a set of circumstances that we could talk about on your show, I ended up in Australia, and I connected to some good people. I also had a moment of clarity, and I started to evolve. I just got better. And through that process of growth, I redirected my energy to better habits and a better way of living. And I didn't realize I was actually a habits person until I was working with a coach, and she really unpacked at the core of my belief system and the way that I operate. My strength is commitment. And, I developed a commitment to good habits, and I didn't realize that until she helped me unpack that. And that was the beginning and the birth of Ultra Habits, which was about 2 years ago. Now, we can unpack that to whatever extent you want, but that's the high level version right there.
Well, you've claimed my heart. You have a real story that it's so incredibly rare in entrepreneurship and in like impactful business. People have a heartbreak story, sure, but a story where they were like, you know what? Like it took me a minute. It took me a minute to figure it out. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So what made you start a company around the one thing that you were good at?
Yeah. So I'm part of a business called Cora, which I'm a shareholder in. I'm also head of growth. That business is a disruptor in logistics. We're a non-asset-based logistics company. And what we do is we compete with companies that have trucks and warehouses and all that. So that's kind of how I've expressed myself in the business context. But that's not who I am. And I think I came to an age and I came to a place where I'm quite intuitive, and I've had crucibles throughout my journey, intentional crucibles. I did an MBA, I became an endurance athlete, ultra marathons, and I got to a place at 39 where I'm about to turn 40 or 38, about to turn 40 in 2 years. And I realized that it was time for me to embark on the real game. And what I'm kind of here for, because day-to-day business is losing its flavor for me. Like the BAU, that's just not me. That's not how I came into the game, and that's not how I'm going to leave the game. So I needed to start to focus and bringing what I was doing outside of work in the form of how I've been impacting people's lives ad hoc into more of a structured brand and business. And that's Ultra Habits. And that's going to be my life's work.
Yes. All right. So he said it. You found me one.
I was like, passion and purpose doesn't always equal profit. And like, have a very clear thing of like, hey, I'm still using my tools and my gifts and still working in this, in the corporate structure where I'm an owner in as well, but I'm also working on this passion, this purpose thing that's like filling your cup of life and providing value to the market. I mean, that's pretty dope, man. Heather, where you want to go with that?
I keep telling Desmond, like, find me somebody who's got like raw guts. Show me somebody that's got more raw guts than I do. He brought me
the thing is this, Heather, I love your energy. I love the way you guys are taking this. I'll break it down. When I got into business, I was 25. I was here in Australia. I was probably at a suicidal point. I grew up in the US. I grew up in the Bay Area in California, and I got my green card expired. I got my green card taken away from me because of my criminal history. And I had committed a crime in California whilst I was trying to fight my cause to stay in the country. And instead of staying, I just hopped on a flight and left. One-way ticket. I went to Target, filled up a suitcase of clothes, stayed in a hotel for 3 weeks, making as much money as I could. And I left the country and ended up in Australia. And the reason I ended up in Australia is because I was born here. I had a passport here, but I knew nothing about this country. And for 3 years, I progressed into darkness. My alcoholism started to become worse. I didn't have the familiar grounds, the familiar people, no family. And I had a moment of clarity facing prison here in Australia. And at that moment of clarity, there was also someone presented to me in my life who became a mentor, a father figure, and he was a business person. And I shared my story with him. I was working for his company at the time, and he was the CFO. And he basically told me that I had something special. And he told me that if I did everything he did, he would guarantee that I'd be successful. And I'm in my late 20s. No one has ever said that to me. I've been losing my whole life, been picking my ass up. And I was tired. I knew I was going to get sober as well. And so, the whole thing of getting sober, meeting this guy, the timing was there. But I guess what I'm trying to get to is I didn't get into business. Like when I was doing my MBA, I went to a top MBA program here in Australia. Everyone there was planned. They were going to be a CEO. They knew that they were doing this. I was doing this business, the education, all that was just a means of improvement. Like it was a means of, when this guy offered me an opportunity to get into his business and to like he was going to mentor me, for me, it was life or death. It wasn't because it was like I was driven to be successful. Here is an opportunity someone's presenting me. And so once I got on that course, I never lost the fact that I didn't do this as some young person growing up with this driven plan. It was about evolving. And so for me, I kept moving through that process. So I ended up leaving that company. They became my biggest competitor. They're my biggest competitor now. Him and I are still very close. But I knew when it was time to leave. And I just know that there's an evolutionary process for me that's beyond the material. And I think part of it is how I came into the game. It wasn't because I was this young person that had this focused plan. Like, that wasn't the way for me.
No, it's always when you come into it's amazing to see entrepreneurs who have a story where they came into the game out of like sheer will. Like I didn't stop and sit and plan on being an entrepreneur. I didn't stop and sit and plan on growing a company. I didn't stop and sit and plan on being a CEO. Like I fell into this and grabbed myself up by my bootstraps and said, you better run or this is going to run you over. And you just go.
That's it.
It's not a, there's no maybe baby sugar pie about it. You just go. Because if you don't pick up your butt and run, you aren't going to make it.
Man, this is fascinating. Yeah, I love how you mentioned the evolutionary stuff. Like, how important is evolution? Like, what's the relationship between like the evolution of day in life and opportunities presenting themselves and like forming new habits? Because like one thing I found myself in habits is it's easy to get complacent when like you got to fall in love with the process and upgrade your habits sometimes, right? Like, especially I trained for an ultra marathon myself, which we're going to unpack a little bit more, but like talk to us a little bit more about like the relationship between like your personal evolution and like forming new habits. Like let's go there.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is when I got sober, I got into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm very grateful for many reasons to Alcoholics Anonymous. But one of the things that is beaten into our minds and hearts is that our primary purpose is the evolution of our spirit, not the material. And so, I'm coming off this education piece from Alcoholics Anonymous that if my spirit is strong, everything else will be strong. And I truly know that and believe that, right? So my primary purpose in life is self-mastery. Business is a part of that, where I express that. It's my art. Business is an art. It's an expression for me, but it's not it's not the be all and end all. I don't need to be involved with a company to an exit. And like, that's not what's going to get my rocks off. I use it as a means to grow and evolve, because running a business is hard. And if you allow it to, it can help shape your habits and shape you in a way where you get better, quicker, stronger, and faster, right? Like, so if you're going to really rise to the occasion of what your business demands from you, like the Japanese, particularly in the samurai era, would use their craft as a means to evolve themselves. Heather would understand that being in the military, it forces you forward, right? So what I do is I use my life in the business, being a parent, all those things to optimize. Being a parent is a game changer. Yeah. Because you don't own your time anymore. That's the fundamental difference. Like, you don't own your time. So if you really want to excel in all areas of your life, you need good habits, because you don't own your time. If you want to be a good parent, you can't preach the sermon. You got to show the sermon, right? So you have to really, you have to optimize how you're living your life. And for me, that's easy, because my primary purpose in life isn't to make $10 billion. My primary purpose in life is to evolve my spirit, mind, body complex. So that's easy. That is my guiding force. My habits will align with that. And then my habits shift throughout the week and the month based on what my environment dictates. So I think the key with habits is it's very easy to get rigid and inflexible. That's not living skillfully, though. You got to understand how your habits are relevant to the context of your life. So waking up at 5 a.m. isn't necessarily a good thing if you're with your baby, your newborn, till 1 a.m. So those people that are like, oh, I've been on a plane ride for 48 hours. I fucking got off and I exercised. Like, I'm not impressed. We can all do hard stuff. Like, for me, knowing your body and knowing when to rest and relax, and then still have the ability to get back into the exercise 3 days later, that's skillful. That's impressive.
RJ, man, it took me 5 years of rigorous habit building to realize, have the epiphany of the flexibility part. And Heather gets on me on this all the time in terms of being flexible, because, I know I personally fell into the trap of waking up at 4 a.m. every day. I was training for endurance. So I'm putting on miles, not really listening to my bottom. Yeah. Going extra hard in the business. I was I'm talking to Heather. I was like, yeah, man, I'm on my fourth 15-hour day this week. And she was like, dude, 2 week max. 2
I would
weeks.
cut you at the knees. You cannot do this.
Yeah. So I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of the flexibility, because like the self-talk is like super easy to like get down on yourself for not keeping the word with yourself, because like that's, inner dialogue. So like what tips do you have to like manage that inner dialogue, you think?
So here's the thing. People that are really disciplined, but they're rigid, they're driven by fear that if they miss the mark or they don't adhere to their schedule or their routine or habit, they'll fall into a rut, right? So the next evolution is, once you have those habits established within your identity, we need to be able to let go of the fear that if we are flexible with those habits, we'll then just all of a sudden give up. But that's an evolutionary process. I think everyone has to go through that stage that you're talking about, where they've developed these set of habits and they're fearful that if they don't adhere to those habits, they'll fall off. But the next, again, everything is an evolution. The next place from there is learning to be skillful and have the faith and trust in your habits. Habits, ultimately, your habits will live up to the way that you see yourself. Understand that. So your habits are a function of your self-identity. So once you're already at a place where working out isn't something you do, it's who you are, you don't have to be afraid that if you take those 2 or 3 days off because you're just not sleeping because you have a baby, that you're going to quit. It's the people that haven't yet built that working out into their sense of identity that need to be fearful. Does that make sense? Because those are the people that, if they don't stay on the bike, they're going to fall off.
Yeah. The last thing, then Heather and Josh, you guys can go on, but this is dope, man. So, and you're a growth guy, right? On the business side. And like, I'm on sales and revenue. I'm all about conversion. And when I deal with like new clients or new people who are trying to sell their stuff, because you got to sell in order for a business to survive. Like, you don't sell anything, you don't have a business. Like, just be completely frank, right? And so usually the biggest barrier most people have of like sales is like identifying themselves and like being certain about themselves to like sell, right? Like, get through the habits of like always picking up the phone, the habits of always following up, the habits of always, delivering value and communicating effectively, like those habits, right? So I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. That's pretty applicable to business. But I'll let Heather and Josh chime in here on some things they're more interested in. But I have a ton of questions, man. So we're gonna play.
Josh, I'm gonna give you one chance.
All right, the question that I have, RJ, I love this conversation, by the way. So thank you for sharing all these nuggets. I'm actually in transparency for the audience. I'm actually in transition still, I believe. I was speaking with Heather the other day, and one of the things I realized is that I still have my identity as a former football player. A lot of the habits, a lot of the mindset, a lot of the conversation that goes in my head is very much that, like, long story short, just stuff that doesn't serve me anymore, right? And so going through this whole process of entrepreneurship, year 2 of my business, still feeling like year 1, to be honest. I'm in that stage right now where Desmond was talking about a minute ago about, really reaching that point of burnout, where it's like, man, like, I can't keep doing it this way. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm doing everything wrong. It's your other people that love you and care for me that, like Heather and Des, they point that out to me. One of the things I'm realizing is, hey, you know what, man, like, you're at a turning point. You're at a, what stood out to me was what you said about your crucible moments. And so it's like, what led you to getting to that point where you realized that you were in a crucible moment, knowing all the identity shifts that you've had along your journey? And how did you embrace that when you finally got to that point where it's like life hits you so hard in the head, you can't deny that those habits or those things that you were doing before no longer serve you? Because I believe I'm only asking that because I know I'm in that space right now. And that whole fight, flight, or freeze kind of takes place. And I realize I'm in a space right now where I'm kind of freezing rather than fighting back. So just wanted to, give a little bit more context to the question.
Yeah. first of all, if you haven't already, I recommend Anthony Trucks. I think you'll really connect with his stuff. He's an ex-NFL player, and he does a lot of stuff on identity and shift. He's from the Bay Area. The next thing is, I think that when you're in the moment, it's very difficult to have perspective on where you're at, right? And there are no gurus. Like, we all get into that situation where we question, why are we doing something? Are we actually moving forward? We start to compare ourselves to other people around us, which is toxic and become, it can become a soul sickness, right? So I think the first thing is to be super clear on our intention and where and what our true north is, right? And as an athlete, you might be somebody that when you start to encounter an obstacle, you push harder, right? So sometimes pushing harder isn't necessarily the skillful way. It may mean that you need to start to be lateral with your thinking, right? So am I trying to push myself as I would towards at a physical object when I was playing football? Is that my only gear, is either push or flight? Or are there other ways that I can attack the problem in front of me, i.e. developing new skills, meeting different people, learning, evolving? And I think that that takes time to understand, like that, the gear shift of when do I need to push harder? When do I need to go under? When do I need to go around? But we need to, there we go. Yeah, light turned off. But I think, having that network around you, like Desmond and Heather, to bounce ideas off of you and back and forward is key. To your question around crucibles, I create my own crucibles because for me, and I think that's also the way that you frame it, like whatever, I don't know what your challenge is in the form of your business, but that is your crucible. That is right now the one thing in your life that is going to make you stronger, faster, everything. Because you've got this crucible, you've got this challenge, and it's no longer probably a physical challenge like you're used to in football. It's now a different challenge where you're having to develop and evolve new skills. And you're going to have to educate yourself on the process to figure out how you best place yourself to deal with that. But you've created your own crucible. The crucible hasn't been thrown at you. You're in control. Question is, how are you going to deal with it?
It's never what you're doing. It's how are you doing it and why are you doing it?
I agree. And sometimes the how is your salvation.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm not really a why guy, to be honest with you. I'm more of a how. The how really evolves my why, because most of us don't have this deep why. I think it's a romantic notion that we've been sold on by Simon Sinek. But for me, I can understand the power in it. But dude, I'm like a process person. Now, what the danger with that, Josh, is you can become working harder, not smarter. So when you're a process person, you got to make sure you pull your head up and don't just throw more energy at shit, because that can be a trap too. This is all a skillful piece, bro. Like, it's like the serenity prayer. Like, it's about having the knowledge and the wisdom to know the difference between what's required at the time.
That is so profound. I appreciate that. Man, I can't help but laugh. Like, it's like there's different types of laughs out there. You have that hearty laugh, you have that stomach laugh, and you have that like humble laugh where you're kind of like, this is a humble laugh for me, because Heather got on to me, like she ripped me a new one on Saturday. And she said exactly that. She's like, you remind me of, a mutual person that we know in the NFL, where it's the same mindset where you're so used to being told by a coach, like, here's what you do, here's your structure, here's your day fully mapped out. Now, just trust me enough that I planned out everything that you needed and just run to that wall, and I promise you, you will break through. Where now it's like, there is no coach telling you what to do. There is no, there's tons of walls. There's not just one wall. There's like a million walls, And were you in the weight room enough to know and have the confidence that you have the strength to be able to endure, what comes at you? And I'm realizing now that because one of the things that she really busted me in the head across the head about was like, you're working so much harder because that's what you're naturally. That's what you're primed to do. That like you have to now work smarter, and me working smarter is like I'm sitting here just like. So that means I have to get quiet. I have to like calm down. I have to slow down. Like I'm used to like
I get it.
Like you said, David Goggins, Gary Vee, like F that, bro.
Grind.
Grind. And it goes back to the whole negative self-talk, because when I'm not grinding and I'm not moving at the speed or the pace at which I thought I was moving, it comes back to, dang, man, what are you doing? Are you even doing the right thing? Like, why are you acting like a punk? Why are you not doing this? Right? You see all these other people going into another toxic cycle. You see all these other people doing it and killing it. Like, why the heck aren't you there right now, bro? What the heck is wrong with you? You used to be the best at everything. You know how to work harder than ever. It's like, stop working harder and work smarter. But it's that fear and that gap of wanting to sit down and maybe not judge those thoughts or those maybe those observations that do come up when you do take the time to slow down. I don't know. This is wild. I appreciate
Josh, your energy is your secret sauce. 99% of people on this planet don't have that shit. The ability to break through a brick wall. Because your insecurities, your fears, your desires, your passions have built you in a certain way that you're willing to do that. Now, we need to be careful of the Grant Cardone culture. I'm very, very wary of this fucking 10X. Like, okay, yeah, we all know how to work hard, but let's be skillful. And I get that they polarize their message. David Goggins, I've got a lot of friends in the military. And David Goggins serves a purpose because he's a polarized figure, but it's not sustainable. No, and also in a physical realm, it's different. Like where you're leveraging your previous life as a football player, it's different. Now you're having to grow new skills. And you're like, I'm not used to not being the best. But this is where the growth is for you, bro. Your opportunity for growth is massive here. Yeah. it's just, do you know what I mean? It's just not fun because you don't feel like you're winning.
100%.
But what if you were?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
What if you could see it from the viewpoint that you were? Like if I could tell you anything, Josh, like I love being your coach, miles and miles. I absolutely love being your coach. And if you could see what I see, we say that to we say that to our kids. We say it to people. If you could only see what I see, one of these days you will turn around and be like, damn, now I know exactly what it was that she said she saw. Because you don't see growth when you're doing it. You see growth when you look back on it. You look back and you go, whoa, fuck. Did I just do that? Yep. I crossed the mountain, jumped over a river, and swam the ocean. But when you're doing it, you can't see it. You're not supposed to. It's not how the world works. Maybe it's not the world. It's just not how God works. I don't know. But you're going to turn around one of these days and be like, damn. Yep, I did that.
I just have to take a pause for a second and say I'm grateful for this conversation. It shows that nothing happens by accident. Simply because today has been one of those days where I've been trying to get quiet. And by doing that, I'm like, no, let me clean up my office a little bit. Let me go do this. I'm like, I'm back to moving again. That's actually why I was late. I was finishing up some other stuff and I realized I was away from my office. And I was like, okay, you know what, man, you're doing it again. Just get back to home base, and man, this is, dang, I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you guys so much for this.
Thanks for
your truth, man. Oh, dude, I think we're going to slide into another segment within your zone of genius that I think is super important to talk about. about, and that is cadence. I know flexibility is important, but like how important is cadence and momentum to show yourself evidence of some type of progress in the right direction, right? Like, because when you're like so close to something, or if it's really dark, you really can't see it. Like, talk to us about like that intrinsic, that gut feeling that's like, I'd rather not break my stride today because I've already, you know what I mean? Like it's like a winning streak. So let's talk to us about that. You can use examples from your endurance training and all that as well if you want.
I'm gonna bring up my first lesson on cadence, and I don't know what kind of audience you have, but it's a bit gritty. So when I was in the US, I was selling drugs, and that's how I kept getting in trouble. And I had a mentor in San Francisco. He was a Mexican dude, and he was my connection. And he used to work in waves, right? So he would be up for 4 or 5 days making money, and then he would go off the grid. And that was my first view on how to manage energy, right? So I would do the same thing. I would be out there for 4 or 5 days, no sleep, working hard, and then I'd go off the grid for 5 days, 7 days, and I'd be back on it again. And that was kind of where I first started to learn about energy management, right? And then you're right, I came here to Australia, got into sales as well. And for me in selling, it just made sense to have a high level of output at one time, right? So when I'm prospecting, I prospect the same time every week, the same time of the week, right? I do my meetings the same time of the day, the same part of the week. So I try to aggregate similar activities that require certain types of energy. If you were to look at my results as a salesperson, they would be like that. The business wanted it like that, but I would do like that, but I'd still get the result. But the reason I did that is because I needed to manage my energy. So energy management is something that we need to be very interested about. And how do we aggregate the required energy, leverage the wins, the momentum, as you're saying, but also then oscillate that with rest. And I'm very aware of that today. And when you're training for ultra marathons, it's the same thing. Like you're training, you're on your feet, particularly with trail running, you're on your feet, you're running. If you're running a business, you're up there at 4 a.m. You're running before the sun even comes out. You're done with your run. And then you're having to manage the activity of the day. So you have to be hyper aware of how you aggregate your activity. Where's the high impact energy required in the morning? Okay, so I've run already 25 kilometers by 6:30 a.m. I need to make my meetings in the morning because by the evening I'm going to be shattered, right? So there's this, I guess the way I'd answer your question is you need to be very aware and plan about how you best use your energy in accordance with your own constitution. And then you oscillate, you move through that energy management piece based on feel and your own rhythms, right? But there was a really interesting article written in the Harvard Business Review recently by an author that compared sales and building and running a business to the same thing as running a marathon and training for a marathon. And I do believe that we need to basically manage our output and our energy because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to be switched on. And especially if it depends on what kind of home life you want to live. You got a wife, I've got kids. What kind of father do I want to be? What kind of impact do I want to create at home? Do I want to be that, the dad of the 80s? I'm working, but unavailable to really teach my sons and my daughter, how to live. So these are the questions that I need to be able to answer. So energy management, output, working in waves, very important in my view.
I could not agree more, honestly. All right, so here's a fun one. I was the to a fault. the business always comes first. I was the dad of the 80s. And I put my business ahead of everything. Multiple marriages, most of my home life, coming home for Christmas, a lot of things. I put my business in front of my friends. And to my credit, like I was really honest about it. Like my business was the most interesting thing in my world. It's what had all of my attention. And it's where I wanted to be. And the people who knew me well enough to know loved me and said, "Okay, you know where to find me." Like, I love you. You're crazy. I'm going to be right here when you stop being crazy. But it didn't. I mean, I was 40. Nah, 38, 39. Before it hit me that there was other things in life that I wanted to do. I had to get over the hump and accomplish mastering, launching, selling like multiple $1 million businesses to get, like, I had to get that done before my brain went, "Oh, by the way, you like this too." And I'm like, "Oh, shiny." I downsized in 4 months. I went from 38 employees, from 63 to 38 to 12 to 4 in 4 months. I flipped my entire business model on its noggin and went back to a boutique style consulting company. I sold off the agency. I sold off the marketing and advertising. I was like, "I'm done." Everybody's like, "What are you doing? You're at the top of your," I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done." I got there. Whatever it was that my soul wanted, it had it. And I was like, "Okay, now I want to figure out how to cook." Something I never put any stock in learning. It was fucking wild. But like 2 years ago, I was like, "I need to learn how to cook." My mom's like, "Do you need to go to the doctor?" I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "You've never had any interest in cooking." I'm like, "Yep, but I do now." So like there's something to be said about not only work-life balance, but what your body, your soul, your brain, your heart, what you need right now is what you need. What somebody else needs is what they need. No two paths look the same. I hope to God most people don't end up taking the type of path that I did simply because it was consuming. And I'm sure that had I been a little more balanced, there might have been things that I missed that I could have seen, done, experienced. At the same time, I wouldn't change my story. I love where I went. I love what I did and everything that I built. And I wouldn't change where I am now either. Like, I don't have the same drive to, like, do you want to be a millionaire? Nope. Figure that out. Not nearly as fun as you think it is. Not as cool as you think it is.
That cooking piece is funny because I'm the same. And it's almost like cooking is too simple because we're focused on all these grandiose big ticket items. And it's something I've learned from my wife, right? Like until I met her, things were an inconvenience that I had to learn real quick. If I was going to make this a successful relationship, I needed to start to become interested about some of the more simple, basic things that I needed to do and provide. Because for me, it's like, well, I'm providing all this, so I'm not going to worry about that because I'm too busy to worry about that. I'm doing this, right? And it's like, it has to be impact. Everything has to be high, like hi-fi impact, right? It's like, well, and I think that's a learning piece with time and age, maybe.
It is an age thing for sure. Time, maybe. I think a lot of it has to do with perception and resonance, like where I landed. Like I came home to accomplish a task. I don't have any plans on moving. I owned a rental property here when I moved home and sold it right after I got back here. I was like, "Yep, okay, done with this. Gonna clean house, gonna get out of here." And I bought 2 more pieces of property. Going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere. You're in
No,
potato country.
last year I learned how to garden.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that another interesting one. We just bought a house that has this English garden, and I'm shitting myself because my wife is like, "Oh, I'm going to do it with the kids," and part of me is like, "Oh, it's going to end up my responsibility," and I'm already thinking about what gardeners I'm going to hire because I ain't going to be out there in the garden. And I understand, where you're coming from, because like for me, it's like, oh my God, 2 or 3 hours a weekend. You know what I mean? Like I'm already thinking about, okay, well, what's that going to, yeah. So I get where you're
For what
at.
it's worth, I felt the same way. And by the end of last summer, I found myself desperate to find a reason to go stick my fingers in the dirt. So desperate. So good. It brought so many things together. It's fucking wild.
And you still do it every day, yeah?
Well, in Idaho, you can't, I don't do houseplants. They don't like me. We are not friends. I do outside plants. I like to grow food. I like the idea of growing food. But I do it every summer, but it's 19 degrees here. It's fucking freezing.
It's freezing. Yeah.
Everything's rock solid. I have 2 succulents and then this big obnoxious green plant in the corner. It's the only one that hasn't died.
Yeah.
I tried everything. But houseplants apparently is not my game. But no, I mean, I grew everything else. It started with like, I wanted cucumbers. I want to grow my own cucumbers. I like cucumbers. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to grow cucumbers, I want tomatoes too. Because I like tomatoes. So I built a little box. And my dad, when my dad passed, I ended up with all of his tools. So like, I have a bunch of like table saws and a lathe. And so I was like, I'm going to build this little box to grow my little tomatoes in on my little patio. And it's going to be real cute. Yeah. I dug up half the fucking yard last year. Not joking you. I grew everything. There was enough food at my house to feed a small army. I reached out to every shelter, everything. I put a little table out in front of my house that said free veggies and like stuck stuff on there. So I was like, somebody's got to eat all of this. Like, I didn't really think about food because I'm not going to cook it all. I do stuff I didn't eat. I don't know how to cook an eggplant. I've never done that. They're good. I've eaten cooked eggplant. I have never tried to cook it myself. By the way, they get mushy if you boil them too long. Not cool. But like what ended up coming out of it is like beginning of last year and like through the end of spring, we transitioned the development company and most of the tech and software engineering into a new company that I don't run day to day anymore. And I sold off all of the done for you marketing, advertising, web development nonsense. Like we parted everything out. We pretty much stripped the business down to bones and got rid of most of the things. My little brother took some time off. He got in COVID and had a pretty hard run last year and was like, I need to figure out who I am again or I am never going to be happy. And I was like, go and do whatever it is you need. You know where to find me. And I took a really hard look at my client list and I pared it down. I was like, if you really want to do something that is a win-win-win, or it's a win for me, it's a win for you, and makes an absolute impact on this world, like I am still interested in working with you. If not, I'm going to find you the perfect coach. But I might not be your guy anymore. And I stuck my fingers in the dirt and I learned how to cook. And I grew 2 more completely leveraged companies, everything about the creative side of me. Like I was an artist. I'm an MFA. I was an artist once before I went back to school for tech. Like everything turned back on. And I'm 40. Like I'm already old. Like I already did the duck goose and like made my way in the world. And I was like, so this is what it looks like to reinvent yourself. Instead of having a midlife crisis, I had a midlife awakening sitting in a pile of mud playing with tomato plants.
There's a lot in that. So I feel the same way when I run in trail running, right? So I always say to people, you need to get your feet in the dirt. So I live I'll be living, I bought a house in extremely high elevation here in Victoria, Australia, where I'm living. We just moved from a different state. And I find that, and this is where I think where you'll start to come unstuck sometimes with business partners and people that have a different view on how they operate, is I do my best work when I actually do more of not work. And
Yep.
I do most of my thinking out in the bush, when I'm running, when I'm just climbing mountains. It gives me the space to come and then have high impact activity. And hence why I'm a growth guy, I'm a sales guy. I'm a person that needs to be in a role that is highly impactful, but doesn't have a lot of, it's not one pace. It's impact, and then I can back off. It's impact, and then I can back off, because that's kind of how I need to work. And I think what you're saying is very relevant for Josh. Like, it's like, and all of us, it's like sometimes throwing more at it, you need to move away. You need to find that opportunity to create space. And that is how it is for you. But the problem is the world tells us that we're wasting time.
You're not.
And then for people with a work ethic, we start to feel guilty. It's like, fuck, am I doing the right thing here? I need to be throwing more energy at it. I need to grind.
I need to try harder.
Yeah,
Schedule better. Be more intentional. No. Go roll around on a slip and slide. Find yourself, smelling the motherfucking roses for all intents and purposes.
I'm with you.
It works. It works.
That's so crazy that you guys said that. Actually, the other day, I realized I switched back into the autopilot. I was at the office like all night, and I remember I sent my girlfriend a voice message. I was like, you know what? I was like, screw this. I'm not making money right now in my business. I got to turn it up a notch. I just listened to an Ed Milet podcast episode. I'm about to start waking up at 4 a.m. I'm already going to bed at 1 a.m. I don't care no more. Like, we about to make this happen. I tried that the next day. I was like, yeah, sorry, Ed, I'm gonna have to let you down, brother. I don't know. This isn't gonna work for me. And it's crazy because I'm already trying to wake up at 5 every morning. And that's even still right now just going absolutely crazy. So I'm realizing, you know what, man, you need to give yourself more rest, because at this point you're not only killing your business, but you're inevitably slowly but surely killing off yourself. So it's crazy you guys are saying this, because I'm noticing now that mindset, that hustle, like old school, traditional, it's
a polarized message, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to motivate unmotivated people. Mm-hmm. That message isn't for you.
Nope.
You got to understand.
Nobody told anybody that, though.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, because what it is, you know what it is? And this is my issue with the motivation movement, is that, and this is going to get deep, a lot of gurus are fulfilling their own sense of self-dissatisfaction by trying to get others to move. And the thing is, someone's left holding the cup. And usually it's the person that's now trying to do the 16-hour days, right? But these guys are offering, or women are offering and so I get that, like sometimes it's good to be barked at, but no one on this call requires that. We need to understand, how do you maintain a quiet commitment with longevity? That's what we want to know, right? It's like, okay, how do we maintain the commitment, keep our cup full for the long game?
Keep our cup full, never miss a ballet recital, always make sure that you do the PTA and the bake sale and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and the family camping trips and by the way, I need a minute, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to go sleep on the fucking beach. Bye.
That's it, right?
That's what I used to do when I lived in Cali. I used to go sleep on the beach. My sister, thankfully, has a beachfront house, and I would just go lay in her backyard. She's like, I'm done. I'm out.
Heather, you're right. You're right. I mean, the thing is I think I was talking about this 2 days ago, that there's a difference between an optimized life and doing hard stuff. And I do agree. So I'm in this community now of everyone's doing hard stuff to the point where it's not even hard anymore. I'm in a military group, which I'm the only person that's not in the military or ex-military, which is quite flattering. And sometimes you have this imposter syndrome of 22 guys that are like ex-military elite of one of the branches, every branch in the United States Army, right? And in there, we're always doing these challenges. And the thing is that the bar continually will raise on these challenges. None of it's hard anymore when you're dealing with people that are disciplined and have an appetite for hard stuff. The hard then is, well, how do we actually become optimized, skillful?
Mm-hmm.
That's the hard.
The hard part is having enough guts to pause, to take a moment to step back and to look at this and be like, okay, so hard or not, like once that discipline's ironed into you, and I mean ironed in at like the crease of your khakis, once it's ironed into you, it's there. That is not a forgotten habit. But once it's ironed in, do you still have the ability or the flexibility to shift into optimization, into the best version of it's no longer right and wrong, good or bad, win or lose. It's what's best now versus what might be best later.
What's hard isn't always better.
No.
But we live in a culture of hero worship. So my mentor is a psychotherapist who's an old man who's actually on the spectrum, and he was, he's very well learned. He was studying comparative religions. He was going to be a priest, and he is very different, has a certain view on all this stuff I do, but he's still my coach. And, he says it all the time. We live in a culture of hero worship, positive psychology movement, right? Like, you just don't do anything but just be. Because if you be, you might die. Like we don't know how to be.
No.
So we constantly in this culture of like, and I get it, positive self-talk.
Go, do.
Yeah, exactly that.
Acquire, integrate. Yeah. And yet, can you square up with that skin sack you have to look at in the mirror? Are you clear with the skin sack you are standing in?
Skin sack.
That is the one thing that I learned. Like I did my turn in being a troublemaker when I was young. Thankfully, like I don't have any sort of bad story when it comes to. I grew up in a white picket fence family. My mom's fucking superwoman, and my dad was my hero. Like I had awesome fucking parents, and I still was a nightmare of a teenager. Oh man, but I went through rehab, and coming out of it, it was me really realizing that it wasn't whether I could or couldn't. It was when I make that decision, is it what I really want, or is it what I think everybody else wants? Because rehab taught me to square up with the chick in the mirror. Like, God and I have an interesting relationship. I am not a fan of going to church, not a fan of preaching, but God and I have a very clear relationship. I promise to do the best that I can with what I've got in front of me. At the end of the day, the only person I have to be able to look at is me. And if I can stay square with that woman in the mirror, we're doing okay. We made it. Everything else is crazy.
What a fire episode, guys. RJ, we gotta drop it off there a bit. So before we wrap this up, what's one more thing that you'll want to share with the audience, or just like some game that you'll leave behind, maybe a quick hack or something, and then also where can these guys find you?
I think I wouldn't give a hack. I would give this advice to get curious about your process and the way that you live life, and start to reflect on what's working and not working, and continue to seek better ways of operating. Be very interested in how can you live an optimized life and what does that look like? And I think curiosity needs to guide us into becoming a better person. I'm at www.ultrahabits.co. We have a podcast centered around habits where we interview military elite, academics, executives, a lot of people from the Harvard Business Review. It's a podcast focused on executive land, people that are in businesses, running businesses, entrepreneurs. And we're focused on habits of an individual, but habits that will impact your organization as well.
So for all you entrepreneurs out there that are chasing like what's the best way to, the next one of you that asked me what's the best way to is literally going to get a link to this podcast and for me to say, don't ask me that again. There's not a best way to, but get curious about it because that's the truth. You get to be curious about what's the best way for you to do it. Not the best way to do it, the best way for you to do it. What is going to be optimized and work and be flow and actually solve for the things that you truly want in life. Because there are some of you out there that want to be millionaires and want to build until you literally can't build anymore. And I have come across some of the most impactful, driven heart center entrepreneurs. They're like, yeah, I want to make $80,000 a year. Great, let's get you there. For you, not for anybody else.
That's great insight, Heather.
So if you guys
thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So if you guys are listening to this, don't forget to rate, review, leave us a comment of maybe something that was super impactful for you on the pod. If you want to reach out to RJ, you can find him at ultrahabits.co. Give them a shout. And if you found this also that could be super powerful for people in your network, please share it with them. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, go to campfirecapitalism.com/guest and let's play in the sandbox. So this was fun, RJ, man, and we'll love to have you back on the show one day.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you guys giving me, the time here.
It was amazing to me too. You're phenomenal.
Boom. See you. Bye.
Bye.